They have people that will cut the stuff for pennies on the dollar, and they turn around and sell a stone that you would sell for $100. They'll sell it for 5, and that does not help people's vision of how much a stone is worth. Because if people start seeing a lot of those cheap stones on the market, they're going to go, well, why is this person over here charging 100 for it? Well, because A, they mined it. B, they cut it themselves. C, it's expensive material. D, there's a lot of experience and expertise going into, you know, the cab that they just cut. There's definitely some difference there. I'm not saying that people in India don't have experience cutting, but some of their cutting methods could use a little love. Um, it's oh, make up stone names. Yeah, don't get me started on those. It's like no, don't make up names. There's no such thing as that. Yep, they tend to shape them and toss them in the vibe. Exactly, Dram. And I've seen that. I've got stones like that I've purchased, but they were agates. So, they were cheap to begin with. Um, if I'm going to buy an expensive stone, I'm going to buy one from somebody I know who cuts and polishes stones themselves, and I have several people I already work with for that. So, and they're all of them are in the United States. It does result in a much worse polish depending on the stone. Some stones are okay with it, some don't have a very good polish as a result. There's also a larger percentage of stones they end up having to get rid of after that because even though they're doing that, stones can chip in the polisher when they're tumble polishing. They can chip, they can crack, they can break because they're hit. One stone is hitting another inside that tumbler, and that alone can cause a lot of damage to stones. That's looking good. I'm liking how that's. I have ads starting in about 2 minutes or so, give or take. Hopefully your idea works out. You spent 2 hours cutting 3 stones earlier because copper sucks butt to cut. Yeah, you wouldn't be the first person to say that. And what did I do here? I see what I did. You adopt them, you're going to use your vise on your smaller saw to cut them. Good idea. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. Some saws are just they chew up the material too much. Ads in a minute. Thank you, Rescup. Yeah, and vintage, those are great for tumbled stones, that people use in various different things and as specimens and stuff. That's fine. High tech lapidary saw, but only has one speed. Yeah, and you need to be able to have a variable speed for certain stones. Yeah, that's not cool, Dram. You need variable speed. Ah, so you didn't buy it for your 10-inch. Got it. We can, Dram. Probably can. Gotta cut them by hand. Yeah. Sometimes that's the best way of doing it. Okay. Question for all those in here who actually do a decent amount of cooking. Okay. I made for dinner tonight gefilte fish. Now, for those of you who don't know what gefilte fish is, there are different forms of it, and it's a fish. Uh, in my case, I make a loaf form. So I take the fish, which is boneless, skinless, put it in the food processor with eggs, onions, carrots, celery, dill, sweet peppers, um, and some like crushed up crackers. Okay, and it goes through the food processor, and you bake it in a loaf form in the pan. Okay, it's a great way to use up scraps of fish that maybe you don't. Maybe you have one fillet of salmon and one fillet of cod or something, and you it's not enough to feed multiple people. But if you put it together like this in a loaf form, suddenly you've got a meal for multiple people. So I did that, and we're trying to figure out where the grit came from. Now I added in dill and chevrill. Yeah, it's like a fish meatloaf. So I added in dill and chevre. Chevre is basically like a French version of parsley. It's very fine leafed. And I added in minced garlic. Okay, those were the only seasonings that went into this thing. We're trying to figure out what's gritty in there because there's no eggshell in there. There was no bones in the fish. And when we're eating this stuff, we're getting something gritty between our teeth. Binder was eggs and, in this case, crushed matzo crackers, which they soak up liquid like crazy. So that, they weren't, you know, crunchy or anything like that. These are boneless, skinless fillets. I've never had matzo meal be gritty. Um, Never had ground up matzo crackers be gritty. Um, we're trying to figure it out. All I can think of is one of the seasonings might be a little on the tough side, but I've never had dried dill or dried chevre be gritty. So, and there was no eggshell that got in there. I made sure of that. Because this has been vexing me since earlier this week when I made it earlier. I bought it deboned and then I checked it for more bones. Yeah, this is like every bite has grit in it. And it's like, okay, what's in here that is doing this? Because I've made this stuff before and not had the problem. The herbs were dried ground up herbs in canisters, Latigo. Yeah, these were blitzed in a food processor so that the whole mix was a puree and then put into a loaf pan and cooked. So yeah, we're puzzled. Next time I make it, I might just keep all the herbs out and see if that was the issue. Because I've made this before and it's been delicious. There's been no uh, grit. Well, there were two different pans of it I made, and both pans were gritty, and both pans were clean, fresh from the dishwasher when I used them. So I can honestly say that there was nothing in the pan other than the olive oil I sprayed in there. And the grit is all through the inside of of the loaf. It's not just on the edges. It's not just on the crust area. Yeah, I'm stumped too. I'm stumped too, Latigo. Believe me, this is something I've been trying to figure out for since when I made the stuff initially on Monday night, and then I made more today, and I don't know, don't know. It's one of those strange things where I'm going, okay, so now what? There we go. That looks nice. Well, I know what the other voice is I'm hearing. I'm going to have to turn that other stream down. As much as I love them, I got to turn them down. There we go. All right. Yes, I often am listening to other streams while I'm doing this, which isn't a problem, except they are not very quiet for some reason on their stream tonight. Okay, so now I gotta mimic this over here. No problem. Yeah. I mean, it's. I'm gonna next time make it. I'm just leaving all the herbs out, which is gonna change the flavor profile, but it'll at least help me narrow down what could be causing it because I had different fish in there this time than the last time. First time I made it, it was all salmon. This time it was a combination of cod, sole, and salmon. And the salmon was from a different supplier than the previous salmon. So I'm, yeah, clueless. I have up Zach Rutledge and Rhinus Leatherworks. And Rhinus Leatherworks, yes, they can get a little loud at times. I love them though; they are awesome. You have Rhinus up, yeah. When you said you had another leather worker up, I'm like, well, there's only a certain number of leather workers up on Twitch right now, so that kind of narrows down who it could be. I wanted you to go, Needle. There we go. I hear them down pretty low. I can hear my stuff better than I can hear their stuff. Um, but I did have to turn them down because they were just a little too loud for my liking while I'm doing this. They're fun people to hang out with, but yeah. I learned to multitask with multiple stimuli long, long time ago. Um, it comes from being from a household of the oldest of three kids, and there was just there was no such thing as privacy or quiet space, especially with my brother around. To give you an idea, my parents wanted lots of kids. And after they had myself and my sister, my mom was told she couldn't have any more kids. So they decided to adopt my little brother. After having my little brother for 6 months, they said, nope, we're not having any more kids in this house. We're done. That this is it. Three is enough. Because my brother literally, he was he was the holy terror. Because both my parents came from big families. My father was one of six. My mom was one of five. And you know, it just never occurred to either of them that small families were a thing. My mother grew up on a farm. No problem, Tanasha. I hope you're okay. So yeah, yeah. A second of 15. That's a lot. 15 kids. I cannot imagine the poor woman that pushed out 15. Yes, we have an emergency hug service here, and nightmares suck. So we send all the hugs we can to Tanasha. No problem, Tanasha. Indiana farm stock. Yeah, my mother was born in Michigan to a farming family. And then her parents decided to buy a farm in western New York State. Now, she was the only child by her mother's second marriage and her father's second marriage. They had both been married before. And so most of my mother's siblings were basically almost old enough or old enough to be her parents by this point. Um, so my mother's next oldest sibling is 12 years older than her. And all the other ones, the older ones, um, oh boy, that's wild, Latigo. That's wild. But hmm, yeah, Well, I don't know, Prof. Most of the families I grew up around had only two or three kids. And two seemed to be the general norm. The fact that my parents had three kids was something of an anomaly, you know. But yeah, my mother's her see, she has lost two of her older siblings. One of them is still and two of them are still around. So the second oldest is still around and the one that's 12 years older than her is still around. But the other two passed away a while ago. That's nuts, Latigo. Your father was the baby of 10. Wow. A vacation souvenir. Yeah, that's happened to people. My father grew up in a Catholic family, and my grandfather, even though he never set foot in a Catholic church most of his life, very much believed in the Catholic ideal of be fruitful and multiply. So my grandfather, needless to say, had six kids. And that's not counting the ones that my grandmother lost. Your father was the baby of 10. My dad was the oldest boy in the six. He had two older, he had, okay, so my oldest aunt is actually by my grandmother's first marriage. But my father is the one of the five by my grandfather. So there's six in total. Um, but my father is the oldest boy. He's got one older sister by my grandfather, and then the rest are younger. No problem, Prof. You have a good night. Thanks for stopping in. Do I have another one of those beads with a bad hole? Please tell me that that is not the case.